All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Post Grad with Asha, NCE edition. So, I don't know if y'all remember me saying that I was going to do a video telling you guys about my experience on the day of my test. So, that's what this video is about. And again, my name is Asha Creary. I am a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Texas and an approved licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Missouri. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about it. What was my experience when I took the NCE? Now, y'all, I can't remember when I took the NCE, what year, but I remember the experience all too well. So I'll talk to you guys about what was going on leading up to me taking the NCE exam. And then I'm also going to talk to you guys a little bit about the overall test taking experience and what I did immediately following the test. So let's jump into it. So the first thing, let's start with what led up to me taking the test. Now, I graduated in May, and I don't believe I took my exam until November. So it took me a while because I don't know if you guys remember me mentioning in one of my previous videos, I didn't know if I was going to graduate because I could not pass those darn comp exams. Can't even get my words out. I could not pass that comp exam. So in my mind, I was not sure if I truly was going to be ready to take that test. So I pushed it out 6 months. That was one. So leading up to taking the test, there was that little bit of doubt because it literally took me about 6 or 7 times before I actually passed my comp exam. Now, let me preface with, I am actually a really good test taker. So during the time of me not passing my comp exam, I think it was the stuff that I had going on personally that was keeping me from passing that exam at the time. So another reason I think why I pushed it out 6 months was because I had a friend who had taken the NCE exam and they did not pass the first time. So me almost not graduating because I couldn't pass the comp exam and knowing someone who actually hadn't passed the test is what really slowed me down in my tracks from taking it, because my school counselor exam, I took that immediately upon graduation. I graduated and I took that school counselor exam literally like a week later and I passed it the first time. So again, I'm a really good test taker, so I'm gonna just keep saying it. But anyway, I had a friend who did not pass their exam and they were so discouraged that I think that led to me being discouraged or dysregulated just a little bit and making me feel like, okay, Asha, you're not prepared, on top of the fact that I almost didn't graduate. Okay, I know I repeated that like 6 times, but I promise I'm done saying it. So this particular friend, when they did not pass, I went into empowerment mode. If you know me personally, you know I'm always speaking somebody up, telling somebody, hey, we're not going to fail this, we're going to overcome this, and we're going to get through it. And something similar happened with this friend. So I was like, look, I don't care what you're talking about, but we're going to study together. Let's take some time for the next 6 to 8 weeks and let's study together. I can't remember if we studied together for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Now, it was so long ago, but I made that person meet me at Panera Bread over in Arlington, Texas, right across the street from the Parks Mall. And if you're from the DFW area, you know which Panera Bread I'm talking about. So we met there for 6 to 8 weeks every Sunday. I would go to work, I think, and then I would meet them after I finished, or I would go to work after we finished. I can't remember because I had like a little side job at the time as well. So we met for 6 weeks. We studied, but we also had a good time. So Panera Bread has a really good playlist. Well, at least the one in Arlington did. And so we would Shazam music while we were studying at the same time. But I digress. So we studied for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, this friend didn't even tell me that they had registered to retake the test. I believe that they probably didn't tell me because they weren't sure if they were going to pass it again. And because we dedicated so much time to studying for that test, they didn't want to feel maybe like they let me down, or they didn't want to have a conversation with me around, hey, I failed my test. So the day they took their test, they sent me a copy of their passing letter. And I was like, you were taking your test and they were like, oh, I mean, I registered for it. You know, it didn't cross my mind to tell you, whatever. But anyway, they passed. And 2 weeks later, I took my test. So leading up to it, I studied one-on-one with someone, and we like literally ransacked a bunch of questions, a bunch of like, we talked about our thought process, how we were making the same mistakes on the same types of questions, or how that person was making mistakes on certain questions that I wasn't making mistakes on, and vice versa. So we were able to get our test taking skills, strategies and our thought process together. So studied for 6 to 8 weeks. They passed their test, sent me the screenshot. I took and passed my test. But after they passed their test, I don't believe that they were prepared for a supervisor just yet. I think I had already been interviewing supervisors, and I had gave them information on a supervisor that I was interested in seeing, and they interviewed in the process of me, you know, the 2 weeks leading up to me taking my test. So let's talk about the day of the test. So as I mentioned before, I was already feeling that little bit of inkling of doubt. Now, again, I'm not a person who ever doubts myself, but because I had those 2 instances, I think those were the things that were causing me to feel dysregulated on the day of the test. So I woke up, I told myself, and this is something I tell myself before every exam that I take, every major one anyway, that it's only a test. It can't hurt me. That's what I tell myself, because in my mind, that is the only thing that is going to help me reduce my anxiety. Okay, so wake up, get up early. I can't remember if I took the test in Arlington because I lived in Creary at the time, or not Creary, sorry, Duncanville at the time, or if I took my test somewhere else in Dallas, Euless. I think I took my test in Euless. So then traffic wasn't as bad. So I got up, got dressed, got breakfast, got to the testing center, sat in the car. I prayed a little bit, I think. And I just was like, you didn't take me this far to allow me to fail. I'm going to pass this test. And I told myself again, it's only a test. It cannot hurt you. And I waited until about 7:30, 7:45, because I scheduled an 8 a.m. test. I got up out of my car, walk in, give them my ID. They give me like a little locker key, and they have me put the key in the locker. And then I go to the second round of the intake process. They checked my sleeves. They made sure I didn't have anything behind my ears. Then they gave me. Then they took me to the back, and I was able to take my test. I want to say they gave me scratch paper. They did give me scratch paper at the time, because I remember writing down questions that I struggled with. So yes, they gave me scratch paper and a pencil or 2 pencils, something like that. So I go in, I sit down, start taking a test. Now, mind y'all know this test 200 questions, and about, like, I feel like the first 100 questions, I was really into it. I was in tune. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pass this test, whatever. About a question 101 and beyond, I was like, click, 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 click. And I was like, actually, you gonna fail this test. And it's funny because that has never been my mindset. I've never just gone in and just started just clicking. I do not recommend that. But let me tell you why I was doing it. I think why I did that was because I got tired midway through the test. I got tired of thinking. I got overwhelmed, and I was just like, we just gonna retake this test. And I just started clicking and clicking and clicking. Now, don't get me wrong. I was reading the questions, but I didn't put no further thought. Whatever came to mind the first time, I just was clicking. And I remember, like, the first part of the test, I think I wrote down like 5 or 6 questions where I was like, I need to go back and look at these. So I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm clicking. I get to the end and I was like, okay, Asha, you need to go back and review the ones from the first half that you said. And I remember telling myself, okay, we're going to go back. We're going to look at these questions and we're going to review them. I started reading the questions. I was like, Asha, don't change nothing. Don't, just submit it. We done failed this test. So I was telling myself. Now, I'm not a person who does that. So that's how you know I was tired. I was very, very tired. Take it, click submit, get up, walk to the front. The lady had my paper folded up. She had it folded up into 4s, I think. She slid it to me like she didn't want to give it to me. And I was like, yeah, I failed this test. Because I think if you take it, I think even now, if you take it at a testing center, you get your scores immediately. When you get to the front, they print it out, they give it to you. If you take it at home, you got to wait. So I'm like, man, I know I failed. The way she handed me that paper, Asha, you did not pass that test. So go and be prepared to do the 45-day, 45-day waiting period and retake this test. Now, again, when I walked into this test, I knew I was going to pass. But when I got halfway through the test and I got tired, I knew I was going to fail. But that little inside of me, and the way that she looked at me, she just was like, she had it folded up. She was like, I was like, yeah, I felt that. Like my chest dropped. But I unfolded it. Y'all, that paper said pass. And I was like, and she started smiling. I said, why do you do that? She was like, well, we try to save face. We don't want to pre-give you the glory of, we want you to have your own experience. So that's why I did that. So I passed that test. Y'all, the minute I got in that car, y'all know what I did? I called the supervisor that I interviewed with. I said, Kenyatta, I passed my test. Kenyatta, are you ready? Are you ready to sign these papers? Because we hadn't already met. She had already agreed that she was interested in moving forward with me. And that was that. So that day I met with her. I had everything else. I had my transcript. I did everything. I think I did my jurisprudence exam at her house. Yeah, I met her at her house, had the paperwork signed. I think I did my jurisprudence the same day at her house, which goes back to one of the videos I did in the past where I said, you need to be ready for when you pass that test to have everything signed off on so that you can send it in the day you pass. Okay. Now, let's go back to my experience taking this test, which goes back to one of the videos, I think, where I talked about accommodations. I don't have ADHD. I don't have anxiety. Like, I'm not one of those people. Well, everybody has a sense of anxiety, but I'm not one of those people where testing makes me sweat at the fingertips, where I sweat over my body, my heart rate increase. Testing doesn't do that to me because I know that I'm a good test taker and I'm usually pretty good at taking exams, even if I don't know the information that's going to be on the test. So the video that I mentioned accommodations in, this was the reason why I mentioned them. I think when I went to take the test, I think they did tell me I get at least one 15-minute break, y'all, but I didn't take it because I just knew I was going to do 200 questions straight through and wasn't going to have any issues, which I technically didn't because I passed. But you need to take your breaks. Do not do what I did. You need to take your breaks. So I think for the exam, you get one scheduled break, or where you raise your hand, they come in, or they say, hey, you're free to go take your break, whatever, and you go take your break. So the reason why I preface with I don't have ADHD or anxiety, if you do, those accommodations are going to come into play really, really, real big time when you're taking your test. If you're a person who's anxious or you experience ADHD where you get easily distracted. The reason I say that is because on a regular day, if you struggle with your concentration or if you struggle with test taking because you get overwhelmed, those breaks are going to be so important to you. Meaning, if you get extra time and you get breaks, take a break every 50 questions or take a break every 25 questions if you requested additional breaks during your test. I repeat, take your breaks if you have accommodations for them. And if you don't have accommodations for them and you know you get easily distracted and you do have a diagnosed disability, such as ADHD or anxiety or PTSD, and you get easily triggered, request accommodations. It's no different. And I'm a teacher. I used to be a teacher in a K-12 setting. I still do some educational stuff here and there. But when I was a teacher, I saw that my kids needed those 15-minute breaks. And I would go tap on their shoulder and be like, go take a 15-minute break. Baby, go take a 15-minute break. Hey, go get some water. And they'd be like, but miss, I don't. And I'm like, you fidgeting? Please, baby, go get some water. And so it's no different than when you're registering and taking your NCE exam, because again, if you get easily distracted and you know you need frequent breaks, use them, request the accommodations so that you have that ready for you. So the reason I went back to accommodations is because, of course, I'm not someone who necessarily needs accommodations, but I wanted to share my experience taking the test to show you that you may get tired taking that exam. 200 questions straight, that's not a piece of cake. And that's coming from somebody who can sit and be in a trance working on something for hours at a time. It's very different. So again, during my tests, I had the little inkling of doubt. Of course, I knew I was gonna pass, but halfway through, I was like, Asha, you ain't make it. That's what I told myself. But I eventually realized that I prepared for the test. Don't change your answers and leave it as is, because you're gonna pass. Now, I told myself you wasn't gonna pass, but that's not even how I talk to myself on a regular basis. But yeah. So I said all that to say is that whenever you get into a place where it's time for you to take that test, think about your past experiences with test taking strategies and how well you do on big exams. The other thing is take your time. I think I finished that test in under 2 hours, y'all. Under 2 hours. And again, it was because the first half, I took my time. The second half, I was like, whatever comes to mind, click. Whatever comes to mind, click. Like, I didn't put any further thought. I didn't second guess an answer choice. And to me, I felt like I was being reckless, right? But in hindsight, now that I'm talking about it, I actually prepared for the test because I did 6 to 8 weeks of studying with somebody one-on-one. So I knew the information. I don't even think I studied anything beyond when we met that last time to study, because there was no point. We had gone through every single section of the NCE and we studied together really, really well. So if you have accommodations, use them. Every 50 questions, every 25 questions, get up, go get a drink of water, reset, go back in there, take the next 50 questions, take a break, reset, come back out, and you're good. The other thing to remember when you're taking this test is that even back then, there was a lot of group on my test, and there was a lot of like group roles, group norms, group processes. There was a lot of that. But there was also a lot of like school counseling related stuff, or like being in a school setting, a university setting. So just be mindful that you do need to be overly prepared with group. You're going to see a lot of that. And previously, there wasn't a lot of multicultural counseling around LGBTQ and the language. Expect to see a lot of that on your test this go around. So if you are a part of the community, that part of it might be easy. If you are not a part of that community, then that part of the test may be harder if you don't frequently engage with that population or that community. So if you don't, study it well, because it's going to be on the test. You're probably going to have at least 10 to 15 questions on it, based on what my practicum students and my interns have shared. But so far, I have had 6 people under me, I believe, take the exam. 4 passed, 2 did not. But these were probably 2 people, one that didn't tell me they were taking the test. But also 2, had they had told me, I would have recommended they consult with their healthcare provider about accommodations. From a supervisor standpoint and from a person who used to be a teacher, I know when things are needed in people usually. So those two individuals are going to be retaking. One studied with me for 6 to 8 weeks. And then there is going to be another individual, or the other individual that's taking their test did not study with me. They went through a different program. So we shall see how that goes. But my experience during the test is that I got tired. I got really, really tired. And again, I am somebody who can literally sit on a computer for 12 hours at a time and just pump information out and read and research and reread and re-research and go from one tab to the next tab and have 10 meetings in an app. Like, I can do it all. But when I say that test took me down, it took me down. But I knew, again, that's why I prefaced with, I knew I was going to pass. Even though I had that ounce of doubt, don't let that take away from your overall test taking experience, because that 1 ounce of doubt, it wasn't valid. I mean, my experiences leading up to it, they were very real, right? I didn't know if I was going to graduate because I couldn't pass the comp exams. I had a friend who did not pass their exam, but we studied together and they passed it the second go around. So there was no way I was going to fail, because I eventually prevailed when I didn't think I was going to graduate by passing my comp exams. And that person prevailed. And then it was my turn. So I knew I was going to pass that test going into it. Again, midway through, that's what I told myself, that I wasn't going to pass. But deep down, I think I knew I was going to pass because I had prepared for that test. Really prepared. And I knew not to make the same mistakes that I made when I was preparing for the comp exam. So I didn't have any boyfriend drama going on when I took that test. I didn't have any distractions. I literally doubled down, studied with someone for 6 to 8 weeks. I got all the resources from my former teacher. She's in Louisiana. So my former high school teacher, she graduated like a semester before I did, because she ended up going back to school to be a counselor. And she gave me her binder full of stuff, test questions, what they used in her program. And that's what we used to study for 6 to 8 weeks. Anyway, she had passed her test, and then I passed mine. My colleague passed theirs, and then I passed mine. And then, yeah, it's been up ever since, but I'm done talking about it. So hopefully learning about my true feelings about leading up to the test, what was going on that led to my experiences with doubt, my experience during the test, and what I did after the test helps you identify how you want to attack and approach this test when it's time for you to take it. So I am sending you guys well wishes, good luck in your journey. I know that if you struggle with taking tests in general, you probably need to visit the idea of accommodations. Again, I'm not telling you you need accommodations, but what I'm saying is I got tired midway through my test. And I don't know if I didn't get up and take a break because I didn't want to take a break. Well, because clearly I had at least one 15-minute break available to me, I think. I don't know if I didn't get up because I was like, if I get up, I'm gonna get distracted. Or I don't know if I didn't get up because I was like, I'm tired and a break is not going to help me. I don't know if that's what my mindset was, but I could see the latter being my mindset. So I said all that to say, take your time. If you have accommodations with extra breaks, use them. If you have one break available, use it. I always recommend going to the testing center. You will never hear me tell anybody to take that test at home. Too much can happen while you're at home that could disqualify you, such as somebody knocking on your door, delivering an Amazon package, such as your internet going out. Now that could happen at a testing center, but there will be more grace for you getting your test rescheduled should something like that happen. If you lose connection at home, if something happens at your house, again, I've never had that happen, but I can very much well see Pearson saying you got to repay to retake the test. because we don't know what happened and it was at your home, you're at fault and you're going to repay to take that test. I could see that happening. So I'm going to always recommend the testing center. And also, you don't get scratch paper at home. That's not an option. I think for the testing center, you will always get scratch paper. So I will say I do paper tests better than I do digital tests. So me having paper to like draw out concepts, theories, the little acronyms that I had for my people, like my founding fathers, that is helpful. I didn't do that on the test. I just took the test straight. I didn't make notes. I just literally wrote down the questions that I said I need to revisit. But I digress. I said all that to say is that you got this. Sending you well wishes. Think about how you really want to approach taking your exam. Find a supervisor, because when you pass that test, you don't want to be waiting 4 to 5 weeks trying to interview, find a supervisor, and get your paperwork signed. Time is a ticking. You cannot get a job without a supervisor. Usually, nobody will hire you without the LPC associate license. So be prepared for the step need to be waiting on you, not you waiting to do what you need to be doing. The step is here, you here. When you get that test score back as passing, you know the step need to move uphill with you. You need to be ahead. So I'm done talking. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm rambling. So I digress. You got this. You can do it. You can pass. Take a step back and think about how you take your test. Look over the accommodations paper and see if it makes sense for you to use accommodations based on how you take your test. A therapist can fill it out. A primary care physician can fill it out. A nurse practitioner can fill it out. If you have listed accommodations at your university that states these things, I think you can get your university to fill out or complete the accommodations list. But 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to have to come from a healthcare provider, I think. I can't remember, y'all. I didn't even review that stuff before I started this video because I didn't think I was going to go into that rabbit hole, but you got this.